just realized something. Anyway, okay. So hopefully, okay. So welcome everybody to our webinar this evening. I am not going to be able to see your questions when you are typing them because I am manning the PowerPoint for the evening. So, but type your questions in the chat, and Jack, if you can just look at them a bit as you're going, as you're speaking. Just check. We can also follow up later on in the evening once the PowerPoint is over. So basically, just want you to know that I did email you all the PDF of the PowerPoint slides earlier today, and the quiz will go out tomorrow along with the replay for the webinar. And in the meantime, we will get started. I just want to make sure that you can all hear me. So if somebody would like to type into the chat that you can hear us and that everything is good, we will get started. And just so you know, Jack, there is about a 2-minute delay between the time I say something or that you and I hear it and they hear it, and the same with giving them a chance to respond via the chat. It takes a few minutes for it to register.
Okay.
That's the only sort of technical hiccup with this technology that we have. And I forgot that I wouldn't be able to see the chat when we were having our... There we good. Okay, so you can see how they're saying yes, good. All right, we're ready to go. Okay, I'm going to pull out the PowerPoint, and then I will introduce Jack, and away we will go. Okay, so tonight we are privileged to have Jack Davidson with us. And essentially, a number of years ago, Jack was looking for a way, an alternative way to the traditional medical treatments to help his friend Alan with the cancer that he was experiencing at the time. And Jack and Alan Ferguson decided to focus on the immune system as the area to help Alan with his cancer. Jack is a graduate from Imperial College London, and he's always had a keen interest in maintaining a healthy lifestyle. And together with Alan, they have studied plant sterols for 20 years and created the product Immunocare. So we are really pleased to have Jack with us tonight. And I will let you take it away, Jack, and maybe you can start with just talking a little bit about the situation with Alan that got you started along this in this area.
Well, good evening, everyone. We're getting really bad feedback.
Sorry, what, Jack?
Getting really bad feedback.
Oh, you're getting feedback?
Yeah.
Okay. From yourself? Are you getting feedback when I speak?
No.
You're just getting when you speak?
I speak it like really bad.
But you weren't getting that a few minutes ago, were you?
No. Huh.
That is very strange. You don't have any other computer open, do you?
Let me just check the second computer.
Sorry, folks. We'll be right with you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's still running. No. Somebody else is saying the feedback is bad.
Okay. But the feedback is just with Jack. Okay, so...
Jennifer, anything?
Did you do anything since before we started talking?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so Melissa said, I closed the screen and logged back in and everything is fine for me now. Jack, do you want to log out and log back in again?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So while Jack is logging back in, I will stand here or sit here and entertain you as best as that I can. Yeah, I don't think he has. Are you suggesting, Deborah, that he should use a headset with a microphone? Because normally it's not needed, and we were just talking, and he didn't have any feedback at all. I can't hear the feedback. I can just hear him cutting in and out.
So how's that? No, it's still.
You don't happen to have a headset, do you?
We do, yeah. Let me try it.
Okay. All right, let's see if that works. It's all so cool. You see people in their living in their houses with their shelves behind there, and then they get their headsets and unlock. That's so cool.
Is that any good?
Talk some more.
Yeah, I'm still getting back here. It's repeating like once or twice. An echo.
I'm not good with headsets. Do you know if your headset automatically connects? Like, I know when I have to plug mine in, I have to.
No, mine just plugs in with those.
Okay. Try speaking now.
Hi, I'm in Calgary.
Is there still feedback?
Still feedback. Yeah.
It doesn't seem as bad as it was before, though, because it was cutting in and out. Can people online?
Deborah, not working.
I don't know what to do here. You know what? I'm going to call you on the phone, and I will hold the phone to the mic on my computer. We can mute you out, and that should take care of the feedback. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so Jack, at the top of your screen, if you take your cursor up there, you're going to see a bunch of icons, and one is a microphone with the with a line through it. Click on that so that it's lit up in red.
Where is that?
It's at the top. It's at the top of the screen. If you take your cursor up there, a bunch of icons show up.
Let's see if I push the mic away.
Okay, I'm trying to see if I can mute my mic, and I can't.
Is that better? No.
Yes, start talking.
Still doing it.
talk.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to mute mine out for a second so you won't be able to hear me. So as soon as I say go, start talking, all right? And just see if that does it.
Okay, is that better? Can you hear me? Because it's not, it's good. There's no feedback.
Okay, we're good to go. So why don't you start? And I'll prolong.
Hi everyone, good evening from beautiful Calgary. Sorry about that interruption. That's the problem sometimes with technology today. You think you've got it all down pat and then something happens, but I hope you're enjoying the beautiful weather wherever you live that we're enjoying here in Calgary. It was 25 Celsius yesterday, so absolutely beautiful. Let me just lead in a little bit and tell you how we actually started our product and why we brought it to the marketplace. As Lorraine said, I was a graduate of Imperial College in London, where I graduated with a mechanical engineering degree. And I'm originally from Ireland, so you might hear a little Irish twang going on. And that's my little Irish accent. Alan Ferguson is my business partner. Alan's a Brit from Yorkshire originally, and Alan is a nuclear physicist. And he and I have known each other for quite a long time. And Alan and I have been good friends for about 35 years. Alan developed a fairly aggressive cancer of the prostate about 20 odd years ago. And it was very interesting, as probably any of you know who have family members or friends diagnosed with cancers. It can be like on a runaway train, right? You're getting the doctors telling you that you need to take it out, you need radiation, chemo, all these types of different things, and it can become very, very hard to decide what to do and how to move forward. I've been around athletics for the biggest part of my life, and I still enjoy running every day. Even 30 below in Calgary, I'm out running, or if I'm on a road trip somewhere, the first thing that goes in my suitcase is my running shoes. And I enjoy trying to keep fit and healthy. And I've been around natural medicine to some extent, training for athletics. And so I knew a little bit about very basic nutrition and stuff. And I said to Alan one day when we were chatting about his condition and his prognosis, maybe it'd be a good thing if we looked at some alternative forms to treat this. Kind of makes sense that if there's a breakdown in the body and the cancer's developed, that maybe the immune system's not coping. So he and I took on a really interesting interest, I guess, in what could we do that could really support his immune system. And when I think back now, I chuckle at myself. I think, well, we had the audacity. We're not doctors, although he's a nuclear physicist with a lot of interest in studies in the chemistry area, and I'm a mechanical engineer. We thought, well, does it really matter? As long as, you know, we've been around research in different industries, but it's still the same principle. And we were like two dogs chasing a bone. We just were hunting for everything we could get our hands on that may support the immune system. So one day Alan was subscribing to the British magazine of urology, and in that magazine there was an interesting article on plant sterols and how they could be very beneficial, supporting the immune function and helping men specifically with benign hypoplasia. So if anybody doesn't know what that is a condition that obviously men get. It's an enlargement of the prostate where they can't urinate easily, so they can't stop the urinary flow, and they can't start it. So it can be really, really terrible to deal with. And we thought, well, if plant sterols help that, and it's one of the side effects with prostate cancer in most men, so let's see if we could get some of this stuff and you try it. So we were able to bring in some product from the UK with just plant sterols, about 30 milligrams per capsule. It seemed to help a little bit, but what really threw us off was the fact that in the European Union, they decided that they weren't going to allow the sale of plant sterols anymore, so Alan couldn't get them into Canada. So that's what's kind of led us or pushed us to try and develop something for him ourselves. And so we started to do research on plant sterols, how easily were they absorbed, how many would you have to take, what's the milligram dose, etc., etc. And so that's what led us to formulate the product that we call ImmunoCare. And it's been sold now to practitioners back into the UK, interestingly enough. And so we're able to actually sell it back. We sell it a lot to doctors in the UK and some other European countries. We sell it to docs in the US, naturopathic, holistic nutritionists like yourselves, and even holistic medical doctors. And we sell a little bit here in Canada as well to doctors and a little bit in retail. So that's kind of what got us going on the product. So here's something I'm going to throw out to you. SDS, as we've coined it, Sterol Deficiency Syndrome. What the heck is this? And, you know, most people haven't even heard of them, but I can guarantee you that in most of our diets, we eat them. And Lorraine, if you could switch the slide for me. So are you suffering from Sterol Deficiency Syndrome? We think a lot of people are. And again, have you heard of them? A lot of people haven't, but no doubt you've eaten a lot of them in your diet. They're typically found in fruits and vegetables, seeds and nuts, and there's probably not enough of them in the diet, and you really need them to support the immune function. So plants have the ability to balance the immune system, and interestingly, they actually have an immune system very similar to ours, and this is a very basic, easy way of trying to explain this to you. So the diet doesn't give enough out. The result is autoimmune conditions, specifically the ones that are inflammatory based. That could be things like irritable bowel, Crohn's, rheumatoid arthritis. These are all severe inflammatory-based autoimmune diseases. And you know what? In today's diet, not all plants contain enough of these needed phytonutrients. Could you switch slides, please? So some of the reasons that we don't get enough is modern agricultural practices. Agrochemical crop sprays, development of new plant species, and plants that are sprayed don't produce enough sterols. I find this really, really interesting. So modern agricultural practices. I spent a week traveling and doing some talks with Dr. Bill Davis. He's the well-known author and cardiologist of the book, oh my goodness, The Wheat Belly, excuse me. Dr. Davis in his lectures talks to people particularly about when crops were actually sprayed with pesticides and herbicides, and it started roughly in the early 1980s. And he showed me the difference between wheat, for instance, that was grown prior to 1980. It was very small. The head of the wheat grew to about 4 or 5 feet, compared to the wheat that was genetically modified after 1980, where the wheat stalks, the head on the wheat is like about 4 inches long. It's extremely large, and the wheat only grows 2 to 3 feet. So half the size of the wheat that was grown prior to 1980. So this is very scary. In his practice as a cardiologist over the last 15 years, people that he treats who come in with heart disease, specifically diabetes, and when he looks at these patients and he takes them off all the wheat in their diet, it's amazing the amount of progress that they make, and they can return to normal health within weeks, if not months. So these agrochemical crop sprays that are being sprayed now is very, very scary and dangerous. And here's another example I wanted to share with you. We were involved with a study with the University of Leicester in the United Kingdom. They sent over a group of researchers to Florida, and what they were doing was testing all the different types of fruits and vegetables that we typically eat in our diet. Now, of course, all of these fruits and vegetables were sprayed with herbicides, pesticides, and what they discovered was the plants have an immune response, and that immune response in the plant is to ward off insect attacks on plants. This is how the plant defends itself naturally, and to also maybe ward off fungus attacks and things like that. So when these plants, typically the ones that we get in our diet, were sprayed and tested by this research group, they found that the plant shut down its immune response because it was being sprayed. Basically, the plant was saying to itself, well, if I'm being protected, I don't need to produce a lot of these protective phytonutrients, so I'll shut down the production. And when that happened, people just weren't getting enough phytonutrients in the diet. So a really interesting study was done at UCLA School of Medicine, where they took a group of Seventh-day Adventists. Now this is a religious group that are very famous and well known for their vegetarian diet. And in this group, they measured the phytonutrient or plant sterol content in their diet, and it was shockingly low. The average diet was producing between 25 and 40 milligrams per day. The diet should be actually giving out about 300 milligrams per day. And this is what the diet gave out probably prior to the 1950s. And this is one of the reasons why we use 300 milligrams of plant sterols in each capsule of ImmunoCare, because the science proves that this is what we should be getting every day. So the study showed that here we are with a vegetarian population only getting 25 to 40 milligrams a day in their diet. When the research group went into an organic region of Mexico and looked at the diet of the local people there, they were getting 300 to 400 milligrams of plant sterols in their diet every day. And the incidences of autoimmune diseases was extremely low with these people. So that told us right there that we're definitely not getting enough plant sterols in the diet. Could we switch to the next slide, please? Here's one of the things that plant sterols typically do. They balance the immune response, or as doctors refer to it, as a modulation of the immune response. And it's done through T1 and T2 helper cells. So if you look at this slide here, it's kind of like in the middle there. It's a teeter-totter. The T1 cells are low, the T2 cells are high. When you have an overactive T2 cell response, you're going to be prone to allergies, toxins, inflammatory diseases, specifically autoimmune. Just two quick examples. There's rheumatoid arthritis, lupus. The list goes on. There's probably about 100 of these conditions. Scleroderma, irritable bowel, Crohn's. Those are all the conditions that you would see in an overactive T helper cell response. Then when you go to the other side of the teeter-totter, you're going to see an underactive T1 cell response, and people are going to be prone to viral infections, cancers, H1N1, HIV, AIDS is probably a really good example of that. So these are patients that are immunosuppressed. So what plant sterols and antioxidants do is they push down the overactive T cell response and push up the low underactive response and bring the body's immune through T cells into a more balanced state or modulated state. When that happens, we've seen it countless times in patients when doctors use our product, they return to better health quite quickly. And And it's very, very interesting. So that immune response needs to be balanced, and it needs to be done through diet. If you can't get enough in the diet, which we're proposing you can't, then you have to supplement plant sterols and antioxidants. Next cell, please, or next slide. There were some really interesting studies done by the U.S. Department of Agro, and it showed for sure that plants that were sprayed with chemicals produce way less phytonutrients. And I'm repeating myself here a little bit, but I think it's important. The diet should produce approximately 300 milligrams per day. And if the vegetarians in the Seventh-day Adventist study were only getting approximately 25 milligrams in their diet, the U.S. Department of Agro study focused a lot on grapes that were sprayed, and it showed that less resveratrol was inside these grapes. And so the instances of not only phytonutrients but antioxidants in the form of resveratrol was extremely low. Next slide, please. So when we have oxidative stress and inflammation going on, the body starts to produce this really nasty interleukin-6, IL-6 inflammatory cytokine. And everything that we've looked at, every condition, and this is without fail, cardiovascular disease, the cancers, the autoimmune diseases, it shows a really spiked level of this interleukin-6 cytokine. It also shows spiked levels of C-reactive protein, another nasty inflammatory marker. When we see a reduction of oxidative stress, we also see a reduction in prostatitis, asthma, pancreatitis, and the majority of the other autoimmune type diseases. Next slide. There are many types of plant sterols in the phytonutrient family, but beta-sitosterol is the active ingredient. So there's probably approximately 80 different types of sterols. So there's things like brachiosterol, stigmasterol, but the most important one is the beta-sitosterol or beta-sitosterol. That is the active ingredient. That is the format that balances the immune system, reduces interleukin-6 and C-reactive protein, and has some really great antiviral properties to it. You might see products on the market, especially margarines, and these companies are saying that if you use plant sterols in margarine, you're going to see a reduction in LDL cholesterol. But what they're not telling people is that these are not plant sterols anymore. They're now esters and stanols, because in order to put plant sterols into a fat like margarine, the molecular structure has to be changed from a free plant sterol to an ester or a stanol, as it's called. So these are no longer plant sterols. And I don't want to confuse you with this, but the point I'm trying to make here is when you eat margarines with stanols and esters, it doesn't really do a lot for the immune response. It will help to lower LDL cholesterol, but in fact it will also go on to destroy some of the necessary plant sterols in your diet. So margarine with so-called plant sterols, as these companies advertise them, are not necessarily a good thing to eat unless you're just trying to deliberately reduce LDL cholesterol. There's no toxicity known to plant sterols, and we've done some toxicity studies at the University of Buenos Aires in Argentina, and you'd have to consume a truckload of beta-sitosterol to have any toxicity effects to it. So they're very, very safe. We take our sterols out of soy for a number of reasons, and we use non-GMO organically grown soybeans, and we squeeze the oil out in the US, and then we extract the beta-sitosterol molecule. You could probably take the same beta-sitosterol from sugarcane, sunflower, canola. You could probably even take it out of broccoli, cauliflower, but it's not really commercially feasible for us to do that. The best form is out of soybean. There's also another important reason why we take it out of soy. Soy carries over another substance that is really an interesting substance, in that there's been some recent research to show that this substance, and it slipped my mind for the moment, and I'll come back to it. This substance that's also found in soy is very useful for prostate cancer, breast cancer, and colon cancers, the hormonal sort of derived cancers. And these cancers are all very, very similar in the body. And genistein is the substance. Soy carries over a substance called genistein, and it's very, very useful for combating cancers. Our product carries over about 2 milligrams per capsule, and the studies were showing approximately 4 milligrams to play an active role in reducing the risk of cancers. Some companies, we put on the slide here, we don't derive our product from wood pulp. Some companies who sell plant sterols are using wood pulp as a source of their plant sterols, and wood pulp comes from one place. It comes from a wood pulp mill, and it's the derivative of all the mulch when they make wood pulp, and we're not sure we would want to be ingesting wood pulp as a source of our product, so we're not in favor of using wood pulp. Next slide, please. This is the chemical structure of sterols, and they're very similar to vitamin D and testosterone. And not to belabor the chemical part of it, but it's very important that these plant sterols are protected when they're extracted. And what we do is, when we extract the active molecule, the plant sterol or the beta-sitosterol molecule, what we do is we spray it with seaweed. We're the only company that I have seen that does this. When you extract them, the molecule becomes very susceptible to stomach acids. And so the stomach acid in the body would have a tendency to destroy a lot of the active ingredient. And so in our early research, we saw that plant sterols could be very beneficial to helping alum, but we also thought, how do you protect these and make them more bioavailable if the acidic air of the stomach is so strong? And so what we do is we spray on the molecule a seaweed, we dry it, and then we put it inside the capsule and produce the immunocare formulation this way. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, sterols are very useful in modulating that T1, T2 response. They're also extremely good for reducing inflammation. They've been used in Germany for at least 20 years. In fact, I think it's maybe even 40 years. They've been used there for benign hyperplasia. They're excellent at inhibiting the absorption of dietary cholesterol. Even though we're not too sure that cholesterol is a really big issue in cardiovascular disease. From the studies that we've seen lately, I would say it's probably more to do with inflammation. Most people that have cardiovascular disease don't usually die of cholesterol overload. What usually happens is they die of inflammatory issues, where the lining of the arterial wall usually starts to get destroyed by this interleukin-6 C-reactive protein, and starts to cause a buildup of maybe plaque. So what you want to do is obviously try and keep the LDL cholesterol down, but more importantly, try and keep that inflammatory marker, interleukin-6 and C-reactive protein, down. We're very keen on antioxidants in the body as well. We can't stress getting enough in the diet. Obviously, a lot of the nice dark, and you guys will know this probably better than me, but a lot of that nice dark vegetables and fruits in the vegetable area, kale. Interestingly, growing up in Ireland, we were eating tons of kale. It was very common for people to eat lots of kale. So kale, which of course is part of the cabbage family, lots of cabbage is important. Brussels sprouts. And then on the fruit side, lots of the dark green, black currant, blackberries, plums, any of the dark fruits and vegetables are very high in antioxidant protection. We did a study on our product at the National Health Science Center in Oregon, and what we were looking for in this study was, how does our product affect the cells, and does it help prepare or protect the cell from oxidative stress? And it was really interesting to us, the study results, and what it did show was that yes, people do, you do see a really good protection to the antioxidants in the cell level. Cells are not normally something you'd want to bombard with different types of nutrients, but they're very acceptable and open to antioxidants, and they don't hurt the cells. In fact, cells get a lot of protection when a person eats a lot of antioxidants in the diet. So the study, of course, was on the capsule, and we use 20 milligrams of pine bark antioxidants that we bring in from the University of Canterbury in New Zealand. And this is a very powerful antioxidant, and it showed also that the product was very helpful in speeding up apoptosis. And apoptosis is cell death. And so if, for instance, you had a cancer, you want to make sure those cancer cells die quickly. So ImmunoChair helps to encourage and speed up the apoptosis process. Next slide, please. So sterols and inflammation. IL-6 is a promoter of inflammation in the body, and it's linked to a lot of diseases. It's linked definitely to cardiovascular disease. It's linked to Alzheimer's. It's linked in the progression of rheumatoid arthritis, as well as C-reactive protein. I think that when we see patients of doctors have this inflammatory marker reduced, it makes a huge difference. Now, on the reverse of this, plant sterols will promote interleukin-6, which inhibits the interleukin-10, which inhibits the interleukin-6. It can help with the alleviation of irritable bowel syndrome, multiple sclerosis, psoriasis. It's kind of like the immunological scalpel in that it can go in and reduce a lot of this IL-6 C-reactive protein. Next slide. So some of the therapeutic applications of plant sterols and antioxidants are seasonal allergies. We did a randomized double-blind placebo study at the University of Guelph, where we took allergies because a lot of the doctors that we sell our product to in the States and over in Europe told us that 30 to 40% of their patient base is people coming in with allergies and asthma, which is really interesting. And specifically in the southern U.S. states, there was a condition that the doctors labeled cedar fever. And cedar fever is basically people who have moved from the colder states down into the warmer states to retire, specifically brought some plants from the northern states, and they cross-pollinated with trees and shrubs in the southern states and gave off this unbelievably nasty pollen, which they called cedar fever. I've been in a couple of doctors' clinics here and seen some patients with golf ball sized welts on their bodies from cedar fever. So allergies isn't just a little nasty nuisance where somebody maybe gets a runny nose. itchy eyes. It can be very severe for a lot of people. Interleukin-6 was dropped by 35% in our study at Guelph. So what we did was we took the control group and we gave them 2 capsules per day, split dose, one morning, one evening, for about 7 days. We dropped everybody down in the study to 1 capsule for the remainder of the 30-day study. And we saw quite a significant drop in basophils, about a 25% drop. Basophils are the sort of precursor to histamine. So if somebody's got a runny nose, itchy eyes, usually what happens, the body sends basophils to the site of the allergic response. And of course, the body sends too much. So people get runny nose, itchy eyes, achy joints, to the point where people feel like they've almost got the flu or fibromyalgia type symptoms. And Immunocare has been really efficient in reducing these basophils and reducing the side effects from allergic response. But we get into a little bit more serious type conditions. Fibromyalgia is one that is very common as well. Fibromyalgia is a real nasty mix of things that looks and presents like rheumatoid arthritis. It presents like somebody's got irritable bowel, chronic fatigue, Crohn's. It looks like they've got all this in one nasty big sort of soup where the whole immune system just isn't responding. I've seen lots of patients with fibromyalgia, and it's not nice. Some people can't even work with it. It can become so severe. There's some school of thought that people with fibromyalgia could actually have a condition that can affect the whole immune response and close off the person's ability to deal with secondary infections, autoimmune diseases, and we find that when people are on fibromyalgia, it's very hard to treat, especially in mainstream medicine, where doctors really don't know what the heck is going on when they tag a patient with fibromyalgia. And it's actually thought it could be Lyme's disease. We've done some work with Dr. Klinghardt in Seattle, Washington. Dr. Klinghardt's a holistic medical doctor. He's highly thought of around the world as one of the experts in Lyme's disease, and he assures me with a research group from the University of Los Angeles or Southern California that all the patients they've looked at with fibromyalgia actually has Lyme's disease. That's kind of scary. The other scary part here is that it could be airborne, and you've probably all been tuned into Ebola on the news in the last weeks, where they're now saying that Ebola is definitely not an airborne transmitted condition, but Dr. Klinghardt is saying that Lyme's disease is definitely airborne, and a lot of people get Lyme's disease from tick bites, but they've discovered that maybe there's not only airborne transmission, but sexual transmission, which makes Lyme's disease start to look like a typical HIV/AIDS transmission, right? Where it's sexually transmitted. People also get transmission through other bodily fluids like saliva. And what's frightening is if it's airborne transmitted, that can be really scary. So interestingly enough, all the people with diagnosed fibromyalgia, Klinghardt and his research group have been able to see that they've actually all got Lyme's. Doesn't present the same in everyone, but 50% of the people that present with Lyme's have what's called the bullseye on the lower extremities. So sort of from the knee down, you've got this bullseye. It kind of looks like ringworm, if anybody has seen ringworm, where it's very crusty and red in the outside, but not everyone presents with this. and it can lay dormant for a number of years, and it seems what triggers it is stress in someone's life, loss of a job, death of a family member, can just trigger it, and then off it goes. I've seen the Lyme spirochete under a microscope at a lab in the US. It just looks like a little sliver of thread under the microscope. And so this sits dormant. The sort of number one treatment that most mainstream doctors will do to a patient is probably antibiotics. Dr. Klinghardt has discovered that he feels that the Lyme spirochete, this little thread, this virus slash bacterium, because they're not sure which it is. Is it a virus? Is it bacteria? But this little spirochete seems to thrive on antibiotics. So he treats people by getting them off antibiotics, detoxing the body as much as he can, reducing the antibiotic out of the patient's body, and then he starts to load them up with cat's claw is one of the things he uses because it's a very potent natural antiviral component to it. He's been using immunocare in his clinic because of the way it reduces inflammation. These patients have a lot of inflammation going on, and it also helps to strengthen and support their immune response. Next slide, please. Here's an example. I hope you can see it clearly on the slide. To the left is a girl. She was probably about 23 years old. I got to meet her, and as you can see, her arms and knees are just covered in psoriasis lesions. And if you go to the slide on the right, this is her literally 13 days later dosing on 4 immunocare capsules per day. 4 capsules a day is a fairly good therapeutic response. Most of the doctors that use it therapeutically would be in that 4 to 6 capsules per day, just through a loading phase. It seems to be really important. The more we know and work with the product, the more a loading dose is important. So if any of you wanted to try the product and use it in your practice, we would suggest through experience that you would dose a person 2 morning, 2 night. Usually about 10 to 14 days is sufficient for this loading phase, and then you can drop the person down. Eventually 1 capsule per day seems to be quite good and get the results that people need. You could use it for maintenance, 1 capsule a day. I personally take 1 every 2nd day because with the enteric coating, it stays in the body for about 48 hours. So if you wanted to just use it as a prevention, then you could use it every 2nd day. But psoriasis is very common as an autoimmune response, and immunocare responds really well with it. We've actually had a couple of other interesting applications for the product with psoriasis. A couple of doctors have actually opened the capsule, mixed it into water to where it becomes easy to apply on the lesions. So they dose 2 ways. They topically apply it to the lesion, and then they also give the patient it orally, and it seems to speed up recovery from psoriasis. Next slide. I wanted to throw this in because this is really interesting. We actually have started to get a lot of people using the product on dogs and cats. And this example, the top slide is a dog. I think it was part Shih Tzu. If you can see on the first top slide, this is a dog that was just covered in polyps inside his mouth. He couldn't hardly eat or drink. It was so painful. The lady that owns him had taken him to several vets, and they'd used everything known to man. Keep in mind that veterinarians use the same medicines or pharmaceutical drugs that we use. So this poor dog was on high doses of steroids and prednisone, which is typically used anti-inflammatory drug. He wasn't doing well. He couldn't eat. The drugs were making the dog quite sick. He had diarrhea. Now if you go to the bottom slide, if you can see it, this is using one immunocare pill a day, and the lady is just handwritten on the left of the screen there, December 6th. That's only like 3 weeks later, and look at the difference in the dog's condition. She says he was running around, he was back eating, no diarrhea, it all cleared up, and so it was really interesting too. So I wanted to include that it can be used on dogs and cats. And another really good reason to use it specifically on a dog is because of the enteric coating. The enteric coating is really important with a dog. Their stomach acids are extremely acidic, more so than a human. And so if you were to give our product without the enteric coating to the dog, it probably would not get the same therapeutic response as with the enteric coating. Next slide. Of course, plant sterols have been used for cardiovascular support for a number of years. The FDA, even Health Canada, have allowed us to say that that it will reduce high cholesterol levels in the body. So it's very, very good for cardiovascular support. But again, I'd like to just emphasize that it's one thing to reduce LDL cholesterol. It's more important to reduce the interleukin-6 and help to promote the good anti-inflammatory cytokine interleukin-10. We saw in 4 weeks in a study that we did again at Guelph, 20% reduction in LDL. So when we went back to compare the drop in LDL in patients using statin drugs, typically Lipitor, Crestor, Zocor, it was quite phenomenal. We saw a 20% reduction in the LDL. These patients using the drugs saw somewhere between a 10 and 12% reduction in the same period, 4 weeks. But none of them experienced an increase in the HDL, and we saw an increase in our study of approximately 9% after just 4 weeks in the HDL levels. HDL is the insurance factor, and you should always try to get your HDL over 1. It's very hard to do, and there's absolutely no pharmaceutical drug that will increase the HDL levels. So immunocare helps to increase the HDL levels, as does a simple other component. Niacin will also increase the HDL levels, but immunocare will reduce the nasty LDL, push up the really good HDL. Next slide, please. I'm going to try and move a little quicker here because it's almost 7, but so why would you use immunocare? Because we designed it to balance the immune response. We use a component in it called salicate. Salicate is basically an amount of amino acids, and then the third component, which is really critical to the whole product, is we enteric coat it. We use broad spectrum pine bark antioxidant, which has over 2,000 of the known flavonoids in science. These flavonoids and proanthocyanidins are really, really important, especially if people are fighting cancers and severe autoimmune type diseases. Interestingly enough, if I just go back a little bit to the fibromyalgia, patients with fibromyalgia had really low levels of antioxidants, as does patients suffering with different types of cancers. So that was one of the reasons in the early days when we were looking at developing something for Alan, could we mix an antioxidant with the plant sterols? And the answer is yes, you could, but you couldn't just put in any antioxidant. It had to be from the hydroxyl organic compound group. So just to give you an idea, we couldn't mix ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C, with the plant sterols that would destroy it. You can't mix antioxidants into an acidic group. So we were lucky enough to find a researcher from the University of Canterbury in New Zealand where they had found a way to extract these all-important pine bark flavonoids and proanthocyanidins using just a really nice clean water extraction process. And that was another reason why we liked to use the antioxidant from University of Canterbury, because they used pure water to extract it. So it's really nice and clean. Immunocare also has a really high content of beta-cytosterol, as I mentioned earlier, 300 milligrams per capsule, which is one of the higher doses in the industry that I know of. You can use one capsule per day. It's really good patient compliance with it, so you don't have to give people 5 or 10 capsules of Immunocare a day, plus fish oils, all the other things that they may want to take. So they tend to stay on our product once they get onto it, and it's like I say, good patient compliance using the product. Next, please. So a pill a day is not the only way. We're really big proponents of the whole body concept, and I know, talking from Lorraine and other nutritionists, that this is where you guys come from, and this is what we love about holistic practitioners. Laughter, good friends, a really good diet, exercise is critical, as is sleep, and of course the third component, which a lot of people don't like to go to easily, is spirituality. But when you look at the studies on spirituality in the healing process, it's actually phenomenal. It's probably about 50% of the process. So people who have been given a really nasty cancer prognosis, maybe they're in stage 4, the outlook isn't good. If they haven't already gone to the spirituality component and they turn to that, we have found that they speed up the healing process. Alan and I used to attend a lot of cancer support groups, and interesting, one of the most important things that was common with all of these people was a lot of them suffered from low self-esteem. Sexual and verbal abuse was very common amongst them, and so when we touched on the sort of more temporal or physical things like the diet, exercise, laughter, they bought into it. But when they turned to the spiritual side, a lot of them hadn't gone there. The healing was speeded up so much. It was phenomenal to see how people had changed. And that can be anything from sitting by a river. It can be, for some people, going to church on Sunday. And it doesn't matter what it is. You have to find it. And I think if we class ourselves as being healthy, and we want to maintain that, I think it's important that we look at all these aspects in our lives. And I'm very keen on exercise as one of the main components of this program. And I run 50-60 miles a week. I'm 64 years old. I've done that since I've been about 10. I've run over 30 marathons, and I attend a lot of medical conventions. And it's interesting because I'm finding that a lot of the doctors presenting at these conferences are starting to really talk a lot about exercise and the importance. Here in Calgary at the Tom Baker Cancer Center, they are using a lot of exercise in their help to get patients back to health, especially after chemo radiation treatments. They're finding that people who they get back exercising quickly respond better. They have less side effects. Of course, coupled with diet, they respond really nicely. Next slide, please. I just want to put this little quote up because Dr. Alan Tyler, he's a Seattle-based physician. He's a medical doctor. He's a naturopathic doctor. He has a PhD in nutrition. The guy is absolutely phenomenal. He was the medical director for the state of Washington, and he used our product exclusively in his clinic to help his patients support their immune response. And he's a great physician and a great natural practitioner. So we were very proud to have him give us a little quote and to be able to say that he uses our product. And the final slide. ImmunoCare is basically a synergistic combination of plant sterols, antioxidants, essential fatty acids, and all inside a vegetarian capsule sprayed with actually Irish seaweed on the outside to enteric coat it. And we've been selling it now for about 18 years. That's about it for tonight, folks. So I hope you've enjoyed the presentation. If anybody has any questions, we could probably try to answer them as quickly as we can.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a lot of interesting points there. If people are going to ask questions, it's going to take, I'm just going to try to scroll here and see if I missed anything. Somebody was sending out the website. That's nice. Okay. Okay. So there's a question from Dr. Cliff. He wants to know, how does ImmunoCare compare to Moducare?
Great, Cliff. Great question, Dr. Cliff. Moducare has only got 20 milligrams per capsule. We really don't know what the active ingredient part is, meaning the beta-cytosterol. They just say 20 milligrams of plant sterols. Our guess, and this is a guess because I've called Moducare and asked them what the beta-cytosterol content is, we think it's about 5 milligrams because that's just the way plant sterols come in nature. It's roughly about a 40% beta-cytosterol over the complete amount of plant sterols. So we think maybe about 5 milligrams. So 20 milligrams of plant sterols. Moducare isn't enteric coated. They don't use antioxidants inside the capsule. So it's kind of like, and there's nothing wrong with the product. It's been around for a long time. It's kind of like Moducare is the Volkswagen, ImmunoCare is the Mercedes.
Forgetting I have to mute myself here. Okay, so I just want to finish off with Dr. Cliff, and then I'll move the other question. He says that they state that you need 100 to 1 sterols to sterolins.
Yes, they do claim that. In fact, we do not claim there's any sterolins in ImmunoCare, and we tested at a lab independently in Edmonton called LabSmart to make sure that when we extract the active beta-cytosterol, there is no sterolins. We have not seen any real factual support that the sterolins do anything. In fact, to the contrary, there was an interesting study done, I think it was 2010 at the University of British Columbia, where they tested sterolins, and they were actually neurodegenerative, so they actually could affect the nervous system in the brain. And we've gone out of our way to actually, over the last 18 years, make sure we don't have sterolins in the product. It's actually technically the beta-cytosterol glucoside is what it's called. Moducare came up with the name Sterolin, and all other manufacturers tended to copy them, and everybody claims now that they've sterolins in their products, but we honestly haven't found anything that says that sterolins do anything. The active ingredient, the beta-cytosterol, is what causes the immune response.
Okay, so then we have two questions here. One is, can you give it to kids, and are there any interactions with other meds?
Absolute great question. You can give it to children. If they're maybe under 2, we would suggest that mom pull the capsule apart maybe put about a third or a half of the powder into a little bit of applesauce, and they can take it that way. It's very hard to put it into a liquid. It's very light and fluffy, and it floats to the surface quickly. So a lot of doctors, especially pediatricians that use it on children, have found that if they mix a little bit of it into some applesauce on the end of a teaspoon, the child will take it that way, and it'll still work for them.
And did you answer the question about interactions?
For drug interactions, the only drugs that we have any concern with would be Coumadin and warfarin. Nasty, nasty blood thinners. It's not that a patient couldn't use it. It probably would be a good idea to take it well away from it. So if somebody's taking blood thinners at 9 a.m. in the morning, we would suggest waiting about 4 or 5 hours, then taking it. And we've got this information over the last 16, 17 years working with pharmacists here in Canada and the States, over in Europe, and some other doctors. That's the only drug that we're aware of that would be cautioned with.
Okay, and then we've got one person asking if you have a U.S. distributor. They mentioned a company called Emerson, and another person looking for a European distributor who's in Italy.
In the United States, a company called Biogenesis out of Seattle distributes to practitioners for us. And I see Dr. Cliff asking about Emerson. The last I checked, Emerson does sell it, as does Natural Partners out of Phoenix, Arizona. They also carry it. We have no distributor in Italy, but we do have one in the United Kingdom who could ship to you. And Lorraine, if you could give this lady our email address, kelt.corp@shaw.ca. If she wanted to correspond with us, we could probably get her the contact information in the UK.
Okay, I will send out that email address tomorrow when I send out the quiz and the replay. Okay, and what is the dosage for cancer patients?
Typically, the dose is in the 4 to 6 capsule per day range. Obviously, if you're at stage 1 cancer, you might be able to do that loading dose for about a month. If you were stage 4, I would possibly, you could be a little bit more aggressive with it. We've had some doctors use 8 caps a day, but honestly, we really don't know if 8 works better than 4. And as you all know, everybody responds differently to things. I've had some people use 1 capsule and get a great response with allergies. Somebody else might need 2. I can get away with 1 every second day if I have an allergic reaction. So it depends. But generally speaking, doctors are using in that 4 to 6, majority in that 4 caps a day.
Okay, and Dr. Cliff is asking, are you familiar with Silvestrols?
Yes, I'm very I'm very interested and know a lot about Silvestrols. They don't interact. They're actually very, very close chemically. They kind of come from the same sort of family. And I've actually met some of the researchers with the Silvestrols from the University of Leicester.
Yeah, we have Dan Burke on as a webinar back in July or August, sorry. Yeah. Okay, and then what about an interaction with Plavix, which is another type of blood thinner?
Yes, typically Plavix used right in cardiovascular disease if somebody's had an AMI or they've gone in and had open heart surgery, stenting particularly. They would tend to use Plavix in the case of a stent in order to keep the stent clear. I would say there's no interaction. We don't know of any. But again, you always have to use caution in these areas.
Matt would like to know, what is the essential fatty acid content per capsule?
It's about 50 milligrams. One of the main components that we use is omega-3, and we use flaxseed. We don't use fish oil. So we use a flax seed derivative. That's the base. That's the main component of the omega-3 in the product.
Okay, and I had a question. If you wanted to give it to a cat, how much do you give to a cat?
What is a cat? Just as a general maintenance?
Well, no, I have a cat who has some immune challenges and is very prone to runny nose. He just got over a bout of an infection. They put him on antibiotics. I've got him on whatever, but it occurred to me, especially if his problem is respiratory, that perhaps the plant sterols added into something like that for him. So
Yes, we've had some good results with cats. The cat's stomach is not acid like a dog's, so the enteric coating is not important to a cat. So if you have problems getting the capsule into the cat, you could open it and sprinkle the powder over his food. And I would probably dose 1 capsule a day and see how that works. Usually with a cat, they respond quite quickly. You should see those runny nose allergy reactions clear up within about maybe 48, 72 hours.
well, that's good to know. I have a bottle here. I'm going to actually try that. So I happen to have a bottle. Okay, so does anybody? Oh wait, sorry. They want to know about practitioner accounts. You don't sell direct. You sell through Preferred.
Yeah, we sell through Preferred Nutrition in Acton, Ontario, and you could definitely open up a practitioner account with them, and obviously you would get it at wholesale, whether you use it personally or for your patients.
So yes, they're now discussing how they all think they should have accounts. Right? Oh, so having little conversations amongst themselves. That's very nice.
Do
Okay.
we know how many people signed in tonight?
I'll be able to check when we log off. I'll have
Okay.
an account. Um, some people purposely can't make it and intend to listen to the replay anyway. So, but yeah, no, I can check when I get offline. All right. Does anybody have any more questions? It seems to have slowed down a bit here. Oh, so Laura's asking where for accounts. I'm assuming that is Laura. For nutrition, PNO, www.pno.ca. You can get the contact information there. I can put that in the email that I send out tomorrow as well.
Laura, just quickly, we also have a book that we've come out with that really explains the product, and we found that people really get a lot of good information from it. If you order from Preferred Nutrition, please ask them to, let's say you ordered 6 bottles or a dozen, it doesn't matter. They will send out books to you as well, and you can have them in your practice and give them out to people. It's really helpful and informative.
No, the accounts will also be across Canada as well. Preferred is available. Preferred Nutrition distributes all across Canada. So, Laura, you don't have to worry about it just being Ontario. Kitty, I will let you know how things work with my kitty. We will. There's a book that Jack is willing to send to all of you who came on tonight. And I will send you his email address, and you have to email your address to Jack to get the book, Immunity, Thrive in a Toxic World. So I will put that in the email that goes out tomorrow as well. And no, you get the actual real book, not a download, Barbara. There was one other question here about, sorry. Off the screen, about Crestor, and would you not recommend this to someone on Crestor or Cymbalta? Or so would not recommend this.
Yeah, you can use it with statin drugs. It would be safe to do that. Absolutely. In fact, there were some good studies done where it showed that if you used plant sterols with statin drugs, it actually reduced the LDL even further. I'm not sure I'd want to go down too far. There seems to be a big push right now at the moment where cardiologists want the LDL down under 2. It's only about 3, 4, 5 years ago that 6 was considered normal. Now they would like to see it down under 2. The only way to get it down that low, you definitely can't do it with diet and exercise yet. You have to take statin drugs. And if anybody remembers seeing an article in Newsweek about 4 years ago where Crestor said, or the makers of Crestor, that they'd like to see every man, woman, and child in Canada on a statin drug for prevention, I think to get down under that too is not really a good idea. We need cholesterol. It's a really important hormone in the body. The brain is full of cholesterol. So to reduce it down to those levels, studies at Harvard is showing that could cause Alzheimer's disease and could actually trigger a heart attack. So I think we want to be careful getting LDL down to those levels.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I've read a lot of stuff about how having too low cholesterol is not very protective for us, especially as we age. Okay, so I think that's the end of the questions. We've got a lot of thank yous, great presentation, informative webinar. It says great presentation, Jack. We finally got to hear you speak about this product. So somebody was wanting to hear you speak about this product.
That's nice, and thanks to everyone for listening late at night, and I really do appreciate it. And we're really open to people calling us, emailing us. It's not just trying to sell product. We're here to help people, and we actually donate free product to an HIV clinic in Uganda, and it's about giving back a little bit. So we try to do our part. So thanks everyone for listening, and if you want to contact me later, please don't hesitate.
Okay, so Matt's just agreeing with you about the cholesterol, and if we have no more questions, then I think that we will sign off for tonight, and I will send you all an email tomorrow. You will get the link for the replay sent to you automatically, and then I'll be sending a separate email with the other information that I mentioned tonight. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, and have a good evening.
Thank you.